Now let the fun begin.
Okay. I
Cool.
thought we were having fun already.
We were definitely having fun already. We're just taking it to the next level at this point. We have something very interesting here today. We're going to look at why investors say yes and why investors say no. In the early stages of a startup, it's all about the founder. We're going to talk about what investors look for in a founder and what they're definitely not looking for in a founder. We're even going to make a top 3 of what investors are looking for in a founder. My guest today, Keji, has years of experience in answering just this question. This is Raw Startup. What are investors really looking for? Why do they say no? It can be really frustrating. Keji Mustafa is from Connect Ventures in London, and she works with exactly that. Keji, welcome, and tell me a little bit about yourself.
Hello. Hi, yes, I'm Keji, and I'm head of network and brand at Connect Ventures. And Connect Ventures is a pan-European seed stage fund, so we invest early. We're based in London, and we essentially are thesis-led. So we back product founders, and these are founders who are obsessed with the user experience. They want to solve hard problems at scale, using software, of course, and they want to build products that are loved by many and made with love. So that's in essence like the sort of founders we look for. And more importantly is because we lead the rounds, we typically only do sort of 8 to 10 deals a year, but that means we get to build this really close relationship with the founders like right from the outset. My role there is I have the wonderful privilege of thinking about how we add value to our portfolio companies, how we help our founders scale, how we help them plug their incredible knowledge gaps because they're doing crazy things. So of course, there's so much they don't know, and how we sort of connect them to each other because being a founder is a lonely journey and we want them to enjoy it as best as possible. We've backed around 62. I think we're finalizing a couple portfolio companies. And yeah, we'll see a crazy number of deals. And there are about 140 or so founders in the network.
So we're talking like hundreds and hundreds of founders at least every year that you look at and say, maybe this is good, maybe this is not so good.
Yeah, precisely. The people piece, like the founder traits and the founder behaviors, because, you know, at the stage we invest, it's oftentimes just, you know, a couple of founders and a dog in a basement somewhere. So as much as we might love an idea and love the fact that they fit our thesis, you know, we're really backing the person. And that's where these traits really come into play.
Yeah, and this is what's important. I'm going to repeat that again is when you do early stage investing, you don't have very much of a product. You do not have very much of traction. So you have to back the founders.
Yeah, exactly. You really have to, like, that person is, can we buy into them? Because it's a long journey. It's like a 10-year journey, right? Like, is this someone you think you can be on this journey with for that long? So
let's talk about first, what are you definitely not looking for?
Good question. We're definitely not looking for founders who think they know everything. That's the starting point. I mean, we're expecting you to have domain expertise or at least deep knowledge of the problem you're solving, and that's a given, because essentially, you know, it's always funny when you meet founders and they expect you to know so much about their sector, and you think, but you know, I don't spend every day in it, so I'm definitely not going to know. You're the expert in that. But there's a level of, you know, there's a fine line between confidence and arrogance. And so yeah, we're definitely not looking for founders who are arrogant and think they know everything and think like, you know, I'm just going to take your money because I know it all already, because invariably they don't. So yeah, that's the first thing.
Yeah, and this is important because things change all the time. Exactly. And they're going to hit a wall once in a while, and arrogance is not going to help you there, right?
No, exactly. Oftentimes you're going to find yourself in a feeling that I actually don't know what I'm doing, and that's okay. That's exactly what's expected, right? In that sense. I think another thing that we definitely don't look for, I suppose, are founders who aren't good at telling a story, because it links back to the other piece, which is like, as a founder, your job is you have this crazy vision in your head and you're going to do these monumental things, but essentially you have to tell the story to bring everyone else on board. And you need to tell a story to your investors. You need to tell a story to your first customers. You need to tell a story to people you want to join your team. And if you can't tell a story and be able to switch in between and pick out the bits that are going to resonate most with the audience you're trying to reach, you're going to have big problems. And it doesn't matter how much you raise, if you can't get those 3 pieces done, like, yeah, that's going to be a real challenge. And storytelling is a skill that you can see very early from the outset, like how they bring you along for the journey.
And there could be multiple founders. You need one of them to be able to tell the story, right? Another thing I learned out there too is also, if you keep telling that story, and sometimes you can put that story in the mouth of somebody else and they start spreading. Like it's really amazing if it's easy to understand, right?
Completely. And that's the test, right? You know, how do people relay it when you're not in the room? And if you don't have those skills down pat, then you don't tell it in a way that sticks. And if it doesn't stick, it's not going to be relayed how you want it to be relayed. So yeah, that's completely. We always laugh because it's always a thing where it's like always be selling, always be hiring. Like you're always telling that story.
Right.
So just
keep going, and
now.
you can't get tired of it because you're going to keep doing it to everybody,
Exactly.
including your partner. I mean, they need to back you all the time too. Everybody needs to hear it.
Completely.
So you have one more thing you think that we should talk about on people that you're definitely not looking for?
Yes, they're all interlinked, but I guess the third would be like people who are completely and utterly wedded to their goal, the vision. Like the vision has to be there, of course, but you have to be willing to deviate from whatever lane you set yourself. And it comes back to, what we were saying earlier about the arrogance, because the roadmap is going to shift. It's going to be changing all the time. And so long as you're willing to be open to ideas and open to challenges, then actually you're more likely to get to what you're trying to get to. And that's a trait that comes up again and again and again and again. And like, you've got you've got all your deck, you've got all your numbers, you've got everything. But then you get a question that's like, well, does this roadmap actually make sense? Does this vision actually make sense in the same way? And then, yeah, sometimes I have seen conflict where founders really are like wedded to that. And that's a big shame, really.
Could we call this something like ready to pivot, or is it the same as ready to pivot, or how do you see this?
I think I'd see this as like, actually it's a skill of rapid experimentation.
Okay.
Because it on a macro level, it's like, oh, maybe you're changing your roadmap or changing a big thing, or changing your pricing or whatever. But on a smaller level, it's like how every couple of weeks are you testing things? You put something out there to your customers. Is it not working? Like it's a skill really, and it's a culture thing. And if you have that within, you can embed that into your company, and you just build that habit and the muscle of rapid experimentation.
And just saying, hey, I was wrong last week. We learned this week. This is what we're going to do.
Exactly. And like I say, some of the best founders in our portfolio are the ones who celebrate that and are so quick to be like, oh, tested it, didn't work, great, move on. But they all, they're happy to do that and they're excited to do that. And that's a real distinction.
And that is actually sometimes hard to do. Sometimes you feel like you promise the investor or people around you, hey, we're going to do this. And then you figure out next year, holy shit, no, we're going to do something else.
Exactly. I think investors will respect you more if you're able to put your hand up and just be like, oh, actually, we're going to do something else. Obviously, making data-driven decisions. But, that ability to pivot is like, that's a great trait in a leader, and that's what you want to see from a founding team.
Any final thing we want to talk about of people that you're not looking for?
I suppose maybe courage. People who aren't courageous, that comes out quite clearly when you challenge and you say, well, how are you going to spend this money, and how quickly can you spend it? Because that's also a scary thing with a venture business. You're moving at speed. Once you raise that money, you need to be able to spend it. And actually, it makes me a little bit sad sometimes because you see founders who just so paralyzed by fear to spend, to move forward, to experiment, to fail, to break things and things like that. And that shows in like the amount of traction they make. It shows in how they think about things, the way they communicate, like their trajectory, their growth mindset. Like it comes across so much. And I think courage can be learned. I think it's definitely a skill to be learned. But that's something we don't want. We lack. We don't want to see founders lack courage.
Next thing here are the things we're looking for. We're going to do a top 3 here of the things that Keji is definitely looking for, and I think a lot of investors are looking for. So let's start with number 3, coachability.
We talked about this earlier, that fine line between confidence and arrogance. But essentially, I said earlier, the mission of our network, the founder network, is to help plug knowledge gaps, accelerate their speed of learning so they can make better decisions. Coachability comes with being able to be to know that you don't know everything, to know that actually you have a ton of knowledge gaps, like just going into it already knowing like there's so much I don't know and I'm going to have to learn on the go. But do you have a willingness to do so? Right. Like, and you'll get coached by your advisors, your actual coaches, your board, your therapist, you'll get it from everyone. But the point is like, are you willing to actually take on board what they're saying and then do the work to bridge that gap? So coachability is a huge one, because if you can't do that, that shows you don't have a growth mindset, and that's the very foundation of a venture-backed business for sure.
Number 2, conviction.
This is a funny one because all of them intertwine, right? Because again, if you have conviction, it means you have a level of confidence in what you're saying and what you're trying to do. But actually, some founders sort of crumble when they're challenged too hard. And so for founders, it's that fine line, having conviction and really believing what utopia you're trying to create, this vision that you have, and bringing it to the foreground, taking the challenges on board, but taking them in a kind of thankful way to be able to like sharpen your conviction even more and to help you and articulate what you're doing even more, and being kind of quite dogged that like this world that we're trying to build doesn't exist yet, this category we're trying to create doesn't exist yet, but knowing that like I know we can do it. I know I have the right team. I know I just need you to help me, help us know our blind spots, see where we're at, challenge us, and help us refine our thinking. But without a doubt, this is what we're trying to do. So
yeah. I sometimes say something like have faith. Like it's not a religious thing, but it's a religious belief in what you're doing.
yeah,
But I do find there's one thing here where there's a little bit of contradiction here, right? When we talked about the things we're not looking for, we said something about you can't be blinded by the goal. And like just you can't move away from that. So there is something here, like we have conviction in the end goal, but we might not know the path yet, right?
Yes, you're right. It does seem a bit contradictory, because with conviction, it's like, no, this is what we're trying to build and that's it, right? But I think it's also being like, this is what we're trying to build. This is how I've dreamt it. But the more people you speak to, the more you learn. Actually, it might evolve to something even better than you could ever have imagined. It's still like, it's still in line with the vision you have, but it's just a different way of bringing that vision to life. So no one's telling you that you can't have that great idea, or you can't bring it to fruition, but actually what it might look like might be slightly different, but it's still serving the same purpose you wanted. And that's where that balancing act comes around.
For sure. And it's definitely a balance, because some people also have too much conviction, they don't know how to stop, but yeah, it's a like founders keep going for good and for bad sometimes.
Completely, and definitely like the for bad you do see a lot as well, and it's kind of like definitely something to be aware of. But yeah, I think that's what makes founders so incredible, right? So crazy and incredible, and yeah, I'm forever in awe, shall we say.
Thank you very much for that compliment right there.
Take it, I mean it.
Number one, self-awareness.
I think this one is number one because it ties in all the pieces we've talked about in this chat, right? Like it's good to know what you're great at and to know what those key strengths are, but it's even better to know what like your weaknesses are, what the blind spots are. And if you aren't self-aware, then it affects everything. You're not really going to be open to taking the feedback from your investors or from those around you, not just your investors, like your supporters in general. You won't necessarily be able to grow and build an award like Class A team, right? Because ultimately you're not going to. Exactly, like I can do everything. And it will manifest itself in, you'll end up undermining, you'll delegate a project, but then you'll end up doing it, which then, disempowers that team member. And then like, they then feel disgruntled, they don't feel a sense of belonging, then they leave, then you have to rehire them. So like, it's such a key component. And it also fits into you're going into the unknown. You have an idea of what you're trying to achieve, but there's so much you don't know. There's so much you're going to have to learn on the job. And again, if you don't have that self-awareness to be like, actually, or I'm not good at this, I really should plug this gap. Or on the flip side, to be like, I'm not good at this, I really should hire someone else. And now is the time to do that. And then I can spend my time working on the things that I'm strongest at, the things that give me the most energy. I feel like self-awareness is, and finally, I think it really helps when you think about like resilience and the ever-changing nature of it. It's being able to be self-reflective and just, be aware that you don't know everything. Things are not going to work out how you think they are, but there's a magic to be made along the journey anyway. So I think that's kind of a key one.
One thing I hear also very often, and it definitely isn't true for a lot of founders, is being, and this is related to this, being a little bit humble. And I honestly, you see these, I'm not sure Elon Musk is very humble. I don't think Steve Jobs is very humble. You see these really, really amazing people, obviously, that don't come across as such. But I must say a lot of the founders that I actually meet are very humble and self-aware for that matter. Yeah,
that's fantastic. And I think you're absolutely right. Like we hear about these founders that are, these enigmatic figures, the mavericks and you can almost be fooled into thinking that is the way it should be, if that makes sense. But for every one of those, there are thousands more that are, just not in the public or in the limelight in the same way. Yeah, I think for every Elon Musk, there's definitely a counter.
Exactly. And I think that's super important, that very few people are actually like Elon Musk or Steve Jobs. That's the reality of it. Okay, there you have the list. Number 3, coachability. Number 2, conviction. Number 1, self-awareness. That's it, guys. Thank you very much for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please consider liking and subscribing. Thank you very much.